Adam Gordon. Part of being a business school is to be a forum where these things happen, and also to be a place where the critical issues facing the business environment are debated and discussed and evolved. And potentially we can kind of introduce our academic theory, our industry perspectives, things from other parts of the business, the economic or financial world into the debate.
I'm indeed Asad Alam, and I'm the director of the World Bank for the Southern African countries, the Sahel countries, based in Pretoria. It is a particular pleasure for us to be here. Dr. Gordon was saying, indeed, our objective in bringing out these economic reports is to promote debate and dialogue and a competition and further the competition for ideas, so to speak. Very often people think of the World Bank and think that this is only a money institution that provides long-term financing, and indeed that is a good part of what the World Bank does. But increasingly, with the growth in capital flows across the world, money is less important, and I think ideas and knowledge and what works and what doesn't, and trying to promote evidence-based analysis, evidence-based policy making is increasingly important for our work. So my team will make the presentation, and we look forward to the debate and to a healthy conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to the presentation on the 5th edition of the South Africa Economic Update. This edition has taken as its focus topic the topic of export competitiveness. Now, obviously, presenting a report like this, we hope to generate a debate about the export sector and how it can drive growth in South Africa. The second thing we do in the report is we try to look at the services sector as a potential for driving exports. And the third thing we try to do is put South Africa's export performance into a broader context by comparing it to its BRIC partners, but also to other emerging markets like Turkey, Colombia, and Chile. We see is that all main export sectors seem to be underperforming. Now, the second fact that we take from this data is that South Africa's exports sector is dominated by super large firms. More than 90%, actually 93% of all South Africa's exports are generated from 5% of its firms. And this is just not a story about the mineral sector. If we look at the main manufacturing sectors, nearly all the sectors show similar amounts of domination by large export firms. Now, we take these 5 facts and we try to pull them together to see, well, what could one do? What are the opportunities available to help ignite export growth going forward in South Africa? And we isolate 3 things. The fact about market structure, this very large concentration of large firms at one end, suggests that we could benefit domestically from more competition within markets. More competition would spur firms to innovate, to become more productive, to become more cost efficient. There is great potential for the region to cooperate in producing exports the way that East Asia or Eastern Europe has done by breaking down production across borders to take advantage of all the region's resources, be it in minerals, be it in labor, be it in skills and logistics, to produce a production chain that would allow for a more efficient combination of inputs to improve competitiveness and also to enable South Africa to serve as a platform for the region to allow it to plug into the global production chains for things like cars, electronics, for food processing. Clearly, East Asia did this very successfully, led by China, and South Africa is making a start at this already in the automobile sector, but clearly more needs to be done to generate this as an engine of export growth.
I'll just give a brief introduction of our 5 panelists. On my right, to start with, is Neil Rankin. He's an applied macroeconomist and associate professor at the Department of Economics at Stellenbosch. Next to him is Peter Draper. Peter is a Wits lecturer at the business school, and he's also affiliated to some South Africa think tanks, including the South Africa Institute of International Affairs. Is someone from the sector itself, Ms. across the SACU countries that our country director already said. And she's the co-author of this report together with Tom Farrell, who is also a senior economist for the World Bank, based in DC.
The way I see it is that South African manufacturing particularly is caught between low-cost producers in Asia and the kind of comparative advantages that those low-cost producers in Asia have will run for the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. Even though we know that the China cost is rising across a number of fronts and that low-cost manufacturers are shifting out of China, they're generally shifting out into East Asian and Southeast Asian locations and not into Africa. At least not yet. But on the other hand, we're also squeezed between the developed countries with their technological and capital-intensive advantages. But there is no factory Latin America, there's no factory Africa, at least not yet. The problem is if you want to be that kind of gateway, intermediating between the region and the world, you've really got to get your transactions costs down, which is what you recommend in the report. And essentially what Transnet has done historically, not just under this government, under previous governments as well, is charge higher tariffs at the port and use that to cross-subsidize other parts of the state-owned enterprise infrastructure. So until you fix that problem, I suspect our ports are not going to be competitive, and therefore we will not be able to service this gateway function, and Durban will be constrained.
We've been seeing, declining job creation rates amongst smaller firms, increasing what seems to be concentration. And when we start thinking these things through, especially given the information presented here of the declining competitiveness of these super exporters, it becomes very difficult to think about how can this be a sustainable model for South Africa's growth and development. What comes out of this report is that actually promoting exports is much broader than just a trade policy challenge.
We really can't afford to be ideological about stuff. We need to be very practical and pragmatic when we approach these things. And at that stage, it was just after the global financial crisis. The rand at that stage in 2008 weakened a little bit, and then it strengthened again back up to 750. And at the same time, you had these bunched up administered price increases, electricity, water, the port charges is mentioned here, logistic costs. You had that plus of course the labor demands. And so you've got pressure from three fronts, and we're a small open economy that is open to sometimes fairly incentivized cheap products, but a lot of the time also unfairly incentivized cheap products coming into the market. One thing is we need to get volumes up, and that you do by buying more of your own stuff, and you do it by getting more markets for your stuff externally. A lot of the things that you need to negotiate around tariffs and so on are very difficult. And so we need to come to other sorts of agreements, like, will you agree to prioritize buying certain things from us? Will you agree for us to go and look at developing jointly things that all our markets need? If you go to business, they'll always focus on the kind of macroeconomic labor issues. Labor will focus on the divide between the owners of the means of production and the workers. And government and the other political parties, although there are some minor differences, will focus on a developmental approach. Our institutional framework that's supposed to support our decision-making, support consensus forming, support leadership of the economy in a very consistent and focused way is not suited to the kind of economy and democracy that we are. If we want to really make a difference in terms of our competitiveness, I think we need to recognize that these diagnoses are there, they're very important, but we need to look at those institutions that are not working in our favor.
Exporters who have a little bit of experience exporting are much more likely to grow and to survive than someone who's never exported before. So the concentration of resources to support firms who have started to export, who have shown the initial capacity, but really need a bit of a boost to grow and become sustainable, that's where it's probably the best bet from a resource standpoint.
But I'm willing to bet if you just concentrate on the very low-level key things that you need for competitiveness, like, for instance, cheap energy.
But there's a whole range of instruments that government has in place to support companies in their export efforts. Export marketing insurance, for instance. There's the ECIC, which provides political risk cover, more for big projects than for small projects, but still that's important. I could go on a whole range of instruments. Trade finance, there's an investment promotion agency, a trade promotion agency that take export missions, they do all sorts of things. Chris is deeply involved in it. He can talk about it much more than I can. So, small exporters need to reach out to government and see what's available and start to access. So my view is that we should be riding the minerals wave. We should be exporting as much as we can, but then taking those proceeds from the exports and reinvesting them wisely back into the economy. But competition is emerging, and everybody in this room knows that. So whether you're talking about Mozambique and the infrastructure that they're putting into place, or Angola and the west-east corridors that they're building, the competition is emerging rapidly to our gateway status. Because I think an economy is organic, it's not Newtonian. And if you have this idea that you pull a few levers here and you push a few buttons there, and the economy is going to respond in predictable ways, that's not how economies work. It's an organic organism. You've got to provide the right conditions, and then it will find its own path, in my view.
The fact that we are having constant labor instability in those upstream activities is not helping it at all. It's not making it attractive to invest in agro-processing and so on. The way that has been underutilized and the way that, and I mean even after 1994, it's just not happened. And a lot of it's got to do with the fact that we always want to go for the big things, common currency, United States of Africa, but we can't get steel into Mozambique. and so even if we can just invest a little bit more effort on the bilateral level and then try and duplicate with other countries, I think we'll be much better off.